Hello guys, welcome to Redditor's Revenge. Here we post amazing revenge stories daily. And if you want more content like this, please do subscribe to the channel and stay tuned with us. Moving to our today's story, in which OP's grandfather assisted him in fighting his bullies and gave the bullies a severe lesson, as a result of which they never attempted to bully OP again. Now story. I 17M had always struggled socially, especially at school. I don't know what it was, but people just thought that I was a nerd and a loser. I'm not even very good at school, nor do I get very high grades. But school kids can be absolutely brutal. And if you like one niche thing, they just think you're a freak and will bully you around. I've always been a video game and comics geek, so anytime someone saw me holding my comic book, they'd tease me and call me names. This always made me angry because those same people will go watch the new Marvel movie in a heartbeat, and they all play video games. I guess it's just because I wasn't very charismatic or funny, so I was easy prey for those who just wanted to feel strong. I was always used to the teasing and name calling, but a couple of weeks ago it got more and more intense. It all started after the last period. It was late at school because I had some extra papers to turn in, and once I did, I went to the bathroom. I got done and I had to wait like 20 minutes for my grandpa to come to pick me up from school, since mom and dad are always working at that time and grandpa lives in the house right next to us. Anyway, I thought I'd pass the time with a comic. I took out the latest issue of my favorite series, Aquaman. I sat there on the one chair in the bathroom reading, since no one else was there, as it was late when suddenly Jack Scott from my class, plus 2 of his friends, came into the bathroom. I was surprised to find them here, but I suppose that they had detention and had just finished. I tried to avoid Jack at all costs since, for some reason, he had it out for me this year with constant bullying almost every other day. I didn't understand why, since Jack and I used to be friends in middle school before he got into this new group and changed 180 degrees. However, my attempts at hiding didn't work, since as soon as he saw me reading my comic, he instantly made fun of me. He said I was a dork and that only losers read comics. I told him how am I a dork for liking comics when he always talks about the Marvel movies and how much he loves Robert Downey Jr. as Iron Man. He told me movies are different and that only kids read comics. As soon as he saw which comic, he went on another laughing and teasing tangent about how Aquaman is lame and fit for a loser like me. I asked him what his problem was and how he's such a hypocrite. I told him that maybe he actually likes this stuff but is too afraid to admit that he's just as much of a loser as I am. As soon as I said this, he went nuts, shouting and cursing, and pushed me down. I didn't want to fight, so I just grabbed my glasses and started to walk away when he signaled his friends to grab me, and he kept punching me in the stomach and chest as I couldn't move. I just saw the rage in his eyes as he kept wailing down on me, and there was nothing I could do. I felt weaker than ever, and all of a sudden, I just saw him clutching his fist in the air, and I was knocked out cold. I opened my eyes and just assumed I was still in that bathroom. However, as I started gaining consciousness and looked around, I saw a hospital room and I was lying on a bed. I felt awful and my head was ringing. I couldn't believe that Jack got so heated that he put me in the hospital. I was still confused, so I just saw nurses and a doctor coming in before my family barged in tears and started holding my hand and telling me that they had missed me. I didn't know how long I was out, so I just assumed it was a few hours. To my shock, my mom told me that it had been a full week and that I was in a coma. My mind just raced with so many thoughts about the schoolwork I missed, and if anyone knew. I was about to freak out, but the doctor added something to my IV that instantly made me feel calmer. After my mom and dad left, my grandpa entered. I was always very close with my grandpa, and I just felt safe around him. Grandpa was a war veteran, and you could tell that he still had every military aspect that he experienced still ingrained in him. He was tough and built like a truck, but was still very compassionate and loving. I never felt scared of him, because I always knew that although he can probably kill me in less than 10 seconds, he's also wholesome enough to just burst into a smile if he sees a carrot cake. Anyway, my grandpa sat with me for a few minutes, asking me what had happened. I just told him what I remembered, but he went deep into questions I frankly had no answers for. He asked me why these kids bullied me or what I had done differently. I told him it's just because I'm an unpopular nerd, but he wouldn't take that as an answer. He kept interrogating me about the bully's motives and backstory. I think he was just confusing a normal high school bully with the war criminals he used to deal with. My mom and dad came in to save me from that investigation. Mom was freaking out, of course, swearing that she would call the police on Jack and have him expelled and sent to juvie. Dad was less frantic, but he was also being very extreme and wanted to go to Jack's parents first and let them know that they had called the police on their son. As soon as my grandpa heard this, he went nuts and told them they should never do that. He told them that as a man, these things should be solved personally, and if we hide behind the police, I would never hear the end of it. I kind of agreed, but I also really disagreed. I didn't want to fight Jack, and I just wanted this to be over since I couldn't take this anymore. I just wanted a normal high school life. Grandpa asked me what his name was, and I was hesitant to tell him, but I did. He told me that I shouldn't worry and that he wouldn't do anything, but he would train me on how to stand up to him and fight. I got extra worried and I could just see a lot of bruises in my future. The next day, I was cleared to leave the hospital and Grandpa told me that we would start training. I thought that he would just teach me to fight, but he took me to this clothing store. He told me that I needed to change my wardrobe and that I needed to look a little bit manlier. He picked out some dark shirts and dark wash jeans and told me to start dressing like that from now on. For some reason, Grandpa took an interest in me that I never felt he had before. After the clothes, we went back to the truck and he told me that he would teach me how to drive. I was confused about how any of this would help me fight Jack, but he just kept telling me to wait and see. We spent all day trying to drive his truck and of course, I was horrible at it. I told him that trucks aren't really my thing and that I just wanted some peace, but he kept telling me that I needed to man up a little. I felt offended, but I knew he meant well and just wanted the best for me. The next day, he dropped me off at school, and right before I entered, he told me that if Jack even came close to me, I should just look him in the eye and never avoid eye contact. I was skeptical, but I went in anyway. Everyone greeted me warmly since I had been gone for a week. After the second period, I saw Jack in the hallway and did what Grandpa said. I looked him straight in the eye and didn't look away. However, just as I expected, it backfired and he instantly came my way asking me what I was looking at. He grabbed me and shoved me against the locker because his parents found out apparently. They were punishing him severely. But I told him that my family was calling the police for what he did and that he would be seriously punished. Jack backed off and told me that I better be bluffing or I'd be in that hospital for a lot more than a week. I tried to come off not scared, but I was literally gulping and just cracked and looked away. The entire day I just felt powerless and ashamed. I didn't even want to go back to see my grandpa and tell him what had happened, so I texted him that I have somewhere to be after school and then I'd walk. That day I just kept walking around full of anger, but full of even more sadness. I just didn't know why I was like this. I searched through my bag to find the issue of Aquaman that I had read in the bathroom that one day, and I couldn't even bring myself to open it before throwing it in the garbage. After walking my sorrows away, I returned to my grandpa in his house that night and asked him to train me how to fight. To my surprise, he said no. I kept asking him why, but he wouldn't give me a good reason. I kept pushing and pushing, but he acted completely different and just told me no. I felt even angrier and powerless and told him that if he didn't train me, I'll have to go and fight Jack myself. I thought Grandpa was influenced by Mom and Dad, so I went to them that night and asked them if they told Grandpa not to help me. But they denied it. They also told me how they were concerned that I was spending so much time with him, but I didn't understand how that could be a bad thing. Then, I finally understood. My dad and Grandpa were never that close, even though they lived right next to each other. My dad sat me down and told me why they were never that close. He told me how when he was a child, Grandpa wanted to toughen him up and make him all militaristic like him. But Dad was more into arts and literature. He was more like me and less like his dad. Over the years, this made Grandpa more and more disappointed, and Dad told me how he felt like he was so belittled in his father's eyes and that once his mom, my grandma, passed away, Grandpa became colder towards him. But he was still caring and loving. I understood that their relationship wasn't perfect and that fathers and sons can sometimes have it that way. Anyway, he told me that I shouldn't let him get in my head and that I should just be myself, but I didn't get how being myself always brought me so much pain. As soon as I said that, my mom teared up but told me that just because a bully targets you, doesn't mean that there is anything wrong with you. It just means that there is something wrong with them that they are missing. The next day I went back to school. This time, I was going to follow my parents' advice and just be myself. I wanted things to go back to normal, where I can just avoid Jack like I used to, and just go about my day normally. This was just a dream. The whole day went fine, and I thought Jack wasn't even around because I didn't find him at all or see him in any class. I was walking home, through an alleyway, when suddenly Jack and his two friends showed up and sucker punched me right in the face. I kept trying to fight back, but they did just like they did the first time. The two friends held me while Jack kept punching me. I felt angrier and even more helpless than last time. Still, I managed to headbutt Jack, which did virtually no damage before he gave me a way worse one back. They threw me down in the garbage bags and Jack told me how my parents contacted the school, showed them my medical records, and Jack got suspended. I wanted to smile, but I thought it would just make matters worse. He told me that he doesn't have a future now and that his parents want to send him off to boarding school. I couldn't sympathize with him, but I remember that we used to be friends. I asked him what happened. I told him we were friends in middle school, so why did he suddenly turn so violent? He kept dodging the question, telling me that he had just grown up and realized that he didn't want to be a loser like me. But that wasn't an answer. I told him that he used to love the nerd stuff that I'm into, like superheroes, Dungeons and Dragons, and Star Wars. He scoffed at me, but I could tell there was more in his eyes. He paused for a moment and told me that his dad thought that he needed to man up and that he was weak and a loser. I knew his dad was this macho policeman, so it made sense. He told me that his dad made him realize how he needed to toughen up and become better. For a moment, it sounded so familiar and just reminded me of my grandpa. That moment of connection didn't last long, however, as Jack wasn't through. His friends picked me back up, while he picked up some metal rod from the alleyway and told me that he'd give me a souvenir I would never forget. All of a sudden, someone came in at lightning speed and bashed Jack right across the jaw with a baseball bat and hit him hard. It was my grandpa. I had never seen him this intimidating. Jack's friends let me go fight Grandpa, but he made quick work out of both of them. They couldn't even get one hit in as he smacked them around with the baseball bat. I saw him hit his arms, legs, and faces. Jack was just getting up, reeling from his busted up face. I yelled "watch out" to my grandpa as Jack was about to hit him with the metal rod, but Grandpa made a 180-degree turn, bent down, and smacked him right in the knees with the bat. I heard Jack give out such a scream that it was both satisfying and terrifying. Jack laid there on the ground, holding both his legs with his friends beside him. I got up and put my hand on Grandpa's shoulder, but he wasn't done. He swung the bat one more time and went down on all of their legs as they shouted. He told them if he ever saw them bothering me again or if they called the police, he would kidnap their parents and they'd be left homeless and alone. They instantly nodded, with tears running down their face, and Grandpa and I left. I had finally gotten my revenge. It felt so good and I no longer felt powerless. Even though I didn't do it myself, I still got the upper hand. I looked down on them as they lay there and I finally gathered the nerve to punch each of them in the face a few times. All the terror of the entire school year was finally fading away, and Grandpa had to pull me away as I kept slapping Jack. As I was leaving, I told him that revenge is real and that if you do something to others, you can expect the same to happen to you. I told him how I'm sorry that his dad is horrible, but it doesn't excuse his actions. I also told all of them that if they ever want anything to do with me again, they'd have to go through my grandpa, and next time it would be way worse. In the truck, I asked Grandpa how he even knew I was here. He told me that after school, he followed me in secret to see what would happen, and that as soon as he saw them, he got close to see when he should intervene. He told me that he waited to see if I would fight back, but that he then realized that he didn't want me to turn out like him. He said that he made a mistake of wanting my dad to be a certain way, and it drove them apart, and that he didn't want this to happen to me too. He said that he would always protect me, but that I should just be myself. Over the next few days, life went back to normal. My parents called the school again and got Jack re-enrolled. I saw both him and his two friends, but their legs were in casts and they were using crutches. I wanted to feel bad, but I also felt a sense of revenge. Anyway, I kept reading my comics during lunchtime and felt much safer just walking around the school. After a few months, when their casts were removed, I saw them standing in front of my locker one day. I was worried that we'd have to go through all of this again, but I kept eye contact for a few seconds and without a word, they backed off and looked like they were scared. I felt great, and even though I don't want to be like my grandpa now, I'm glad he is there. OP's grandfather, in my perspective, has no malicious motives in teaching him how to fight. I believe he wants OP to protect himself from such events and bullies. I'm delighted OP is safe for the time being thanks to such a kind and loving granddad. Now, here is the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it, and let me know your opinion about this story in the comments section. And if you had a similar story, you can share it and I would love to read them. So before leaving, please hit the like button and do subscribe to the channel to stay tuned with us for more awesome stories.